In this video, we will be finishing off this question. So this is part 3 of the object / creating a class. So once again, we are using the 2020 November IT paper, the grade 12 one, as an example to just explain this concept. Although we are going through this question, the point of this video series was not to do the old paper. It was rather to focus on explaining the concept of object-oriented programming, objects and classes. Right, so in phase or part 1, we went through creating a class from scratch and setting up the attributes as well as the constructor. In part 2, we went ahead and we completed many of the methods that you might find in a class, and there they are, including the accessor methods, the mutator methods, the auxiliary methods, and the Tostring methods. So we've got that set up in our class here called T_Transaction_2. There it is over there. Remember, this is the name of the class underneath the type, T_Transaction_2. That's the one that we're using. Today we're going to we're going to link it up to the main form of the program, the user interface, where we obtain the information from the user and we display our output and do some of the other processing. Alright, so before we start over here, let's have a look. What is our first question? So we're on to 3.2 now. Just as a little piece of information, in old papers what they do, not old papers but external papers, what they do is they usually split up the object-oriented programming question into 2 sections. The first section will be setting up the class and the methods and the attributes. The second section will be linking it up to the main form and then essentially finishing up the program to display the desired output. So let's start with 3.2.1. They say instantiate the object. Write code to do the following. Extract the customer's ID. The first letter of the container size selected in list Q321 and the storage period in months from said Q321. Instantiate a transaction object using the values extracted from the user interface and then disable that particular button. Now before we get started with this, what I want to do is I want to show you how we link our class to our main form. So I'm going to move to the code section here. The first thing that we have to do, and we did this in part 1 of our video, is we have to add the name of the class's unit to the users section of our main form. So although the name of this class is T_Transaction_2, the name of the particular unit which it lives in is transaction2_u. So the name of that unit will go over there underneath the users amongst all the others. Now that's the first thing. The second part now, or step number 2, is we need to create an object variable for that class. So to create an actual object. Now because this is an old paper, they have already created one, but I'm going to create my own one from scratch. Alright, so usually we make this a global variable. Okay, obj, which stands for object, and now you can go ahead and give it a name of your choice. So I'll just call mine simply transaction2 because that's what it is. And what's the data type for this object variable? It's going to be the name of our class. So let's go and look. What's the name of our class again? T_Transaction_2. There we go. And now we have our object variable. This object variable is essentially our class. It's representing our class. And whenever we want to refer to the class or extract something from the class here on the main form, we will be using this object transaction to variable to do that. It's kind of like if you think back to text files. You don't refer to names.txt throughout your program. Once you've assigned names.txt to the variable t file, then you only use t file from then onwards, and that's exactly what we're going to do here. We're going to use obj transaction 2 throughout this main section of the program. Alright, so now that that's set up, we can go ahead and start answering our questions. So they said here in this button 3.2.1 Instantiate Object, we're going to extract the ID number from the edit box, the size, but we're only looking for the first letter, S, M, or L, from the list box, and then the period, storage period, from the spin edit. So let's go ahead, enter that button. There we go. Now, I'm going to go ahead straight away, and I'm going to call my constructor method. The constructor method, let's talk about that. There it is, we've declared it. The constructor method isn't there for fun, it's very important. We cannot use our class tTransaction2 at all until we've called the constructor method. It is the first method that must be called. It is what sets up the unit or the class in RAM and makes it available for us to use. If we do not call this method, the constructor method, we cannot use the class. Again, if we use text files as an example, you cannot use a text file until you've either said reset text file, t file, reset t file, or rewrite or append. Because one of those three methods will open up the text file and make it available in RAM for us to use. This constructor method does the same thing. It instantiates the object, which basically means it opens it up in RAM, makes it available for us to use, and so we can go ahead and use it. So that's what I'm going to do first, and this is how we do it. The variable name obj transaction2 is equal to the name of the class. Did I spell this wrong? Transaction2 tTransaction2 dot create. Create is the name of our constructor, and we can see this little tooltip pop up here saying yes, indeed, and it even gives us a little tooltip as to what our three parameters are going to be. First, it's looking for an SID, a string, then a C size, a char, and then an I storage, which is going to be an integer. And this comes, it's written over there because that's exactly how we declared it over here. Remember, SID string, C size char, I storage period, integer. So that's what it's looking for. So let's do that. Now, we can go ahead and directly input EDT, what's it called here? EDT Q3_21. The naming conventions here on these exam papers are always horrible. So what I think that we'll do then, for simplicity's sake, so that we don't get confused, let's rather make variables for the input rather than directly putting it in. So let's call it SID. We can give it the exact same names as our constructor, string, C size, that's going to be a char, and we have I storage period. There we go, and that's an integer. Let's make some space for these guys. Let's start with SID. And that's quite simple, we just need to capture the edit box, so that's EDT Q3_2_1.text. There we go. The next one is our list box. Now the list box is basically, well, I treat it like a combo box or a radio group. So we refer to the item index. So I'm going to use a case statement for that. Case, what's this called? List Q3 3 underscore 2 underscore 1 dot item index, we do it exactly as we would do a radio group or combo box. And indeed, just like those, the item index always starts at 0. So item index is 0 is the first option there, and that will be small. But I'm not looking for the word small, I'm looking just for an S. So if it is 0, I'm going to say that C size is equal to S. And if it's a 1, C size is going to be equal to an M. And if it is a 2, then C size will be equal to a large, or an L for large. Okay, if I can just get this right. There we go. Alright, sorted. Now C size is done. The next one, the last one, was our spin edit, and that was I storage period dot value, so that we don't have to do a conversion over there. Alright, excellent. Now we can go ahead and insert these three values, SID, C size, and I storage period, into our parameters here. What order should it be in? It should be in the exact same order as what you declared your constructor in the class. So first we had the string, then we had the char, and then we had the integer. So first is SID, comma, then C size, comma, I storage period. Alright, now back in part 1 of the video series, I told you that you must just be patient. When I explained the constructor, I told you that when we get to the main form, I'll explain to you how the input is coming through here. So what's happening is we declared this constructor earlier, right, in part 1. And now that we're on the main form, we've captured the actual ID, we've captured the actual size and the actual period as input from the user itself, right? An edit box, they choose a list item and they choose a storage period. Now that we've captured that, we're sending it to the class via this constructor method through these three parameters. And what's happening is the constructor over here, let's go back to that method over there. There's our constructor. It is taking SID and putting it into F custom ID. It's taking C size and putting it into F container size, and it's taking the storage period and putting it into F storage period. So that is how we filled our three private attributes in our class. That's the full round trip from the main form to the class. And remember, F amount paid did not have a parameter, not yet. So we set it to a default value of 0. So that's how that worked. Now that our constructor is done, we've sent it off, we've called it, we can now carry on with the rest of the program, and we can go ahead and call methods from the class anywhere throughout the program now, because the constructor is done. So let's go back to our question paper. We've done this first part now. Okay, they disable the buttons, but I'm going to ignore that stuff because that's not really important right here. Let's move on to the next one. Display amount due. Write code to do the following. Use the relevant method to calculate the amount due for hiring a container. Then we need to display it in the panel. And they give us some examples over there. So they don't tell us what method, they just say use the relevant method from the class. So let's go ahead and look at our class and just see if we can remember what method would best suit this. So obviously it's not the constructor. Get amount paid is simply returning the F amount paid attribute to the main form, so that's not going to calculate anything for us. Update amount paid is a mutator method that is setting or adding to amount paid, so that's not calculating the costs. This one looks like a promising one. Obviously it can't be toString, so it must be this one, calculate cost. Alright, let's have a look at calculate cost once again. Here it is, it was a big one. We calculated the cost of a container, per size, then we calculated it per the amount of months that they want to rent it, and then we applied discount depending on how long they want to rent the container. So that is indeed, and remember, because it was a function, we returned the result, our total. So that is calculating the cost. Alright, so that's the one they must be referring to. So display amount due. This is the panel, P&L Q322, and that's where we're going to display the amount. Alright. Now we do not have to call the constructor again. You call the constructor once and then it's done. It's now, the whole class is in RAM. It's ready for us to use. So we simply call what we need when we need it. So PNL Q3 underscore 2 underscore 2.caption is equal to, alright, let's call that function. Now the function calculate cost was a real data type, so it's going to return a real to us. Obviously we cannot display a real data type in a caption, it must be a string. So we'll start off by saying float to string, and inside there we can go ahead and say, right, obj a transaction dot, and we can choose from our list over here what our options, calculate cost. That's the one we're looking for. There we go. Calculate cost doesn't have any parameters. No, it doesn't. So we just need to call it, and that's that. Now, calculate cost is giving us a currency amount in return, which is going to be displayed. So why don't we format that while we're here? Add an F, float to string F. After that, we comma FF, currency 10 with 2 decimal places. There we go. Shall we try this before we continue? Right, first we have to choose, there's our ID number, let's choose medium, and for 6 months, let's instantiate the object. Done. Now we can display the amount. Oops, okay, we get an error. Okay, let's see what's the problem. Okay, the problem here was object transaction 2 is the wrong variable. It's object transaction with a 2 at the end. That's the one that we're working with. That's why it most likely didn't work. Shall we try again? Medium, instantiated, displayed. Alright, there we go. So that's it. 9,450 Rand is what it will cost to hire a medium container for 6 months. And because it is 6 months, it's probably going to give us, we probably have 10% discount over there as well. But that's good. There it is. Okay. So this calculation, you can see on our main form, we have no code that does that. All of this was done in the class itself. Right, let's move on then. With that one done, we can process payment. The customer needs to enter an amount to be paid in the provided edit box. We need to write code to do the following. Extract the amount that was entered. Use the appropriate method to update the attribute of the amount paid. Use the appropriate methods to calculate the updated amount that is due, and then display the updated amount in the panel. Alright, no problem. Alright, let's move back. Right, this is our button over here. They're going to enter an amount that they want to pay. Alright, and when they enter the amount, we're going to add it to our attribute called amount paid. We're then going to take the amount that they owe, the amount that they have already paid, and we're going to see how much is still outstanding, because they may have only paid a portion of the amount so far. They may not pay it all off in one go. Alright, so let's first capture our input there. let's make an amount. We have variables here already. Our amount paid. Okay, let's use that. I don't know if I made those earlier, the last time I did this or not, probably. Okay, so that is a string to float. That'll be edt q3 underscore 2 underscore 2 dot text. Now we need to take this amount that was paid and we need to add it to f amount paid. We have a mutator method that does that. It's called update amount paid, and it's calling for an amount, our amount, which in our case over here is going to be called our amount paid. So it's a procedure, so we can just go ahead and call it obj transaction 2, you must not forget the 2, dot, which one are we looking for here? It's update amount paid. We're looking for a parameter our amount. Now the name doesn't matter, it's just the data type that matters, real. So we're using our amount paid, which is a real. There we go. Now that's going to go ahead and take that amount and add it into f amount paid. Why? Let's look at our code for that particular one. Here it is, update amount paid, our amount. It's saying that f amount paid is equal to what f amount paid currently is plus our amount. Right, so it's adding it there. Now that we have the updated amount paid, we need to figure out how much is left over. And we can do that by using what's available to us here from our methods. If we calculate the cost again, we will get the cost as per normal. And then if we minus the amount paid, we will get the amount that is left over, the amount that's due. Remember that f amount paid cannot be used on the main form. It only belongs to the class tTransaction2. So in order to access this amount, we have to use the function getAmountPaid, which is an accessor method. So let's have a look. Our remaining, so this will be the remaining amount that still needs to be paid. That's going to be equal to obj transaction2 dot calculate cost minus what has been paid already, and that is obj transaction2 dot get amount paid. Alright, again, the total amount that needs to be paid minus what we have already paid gives us what is remaining. And now we can display the remaining amount in the panel. So that is that is P&L Q3 2 1.2. These names are horrible. Is equal to float to string f. Okay, I'm going to format it again. Our remaining. Let's have a look. So medium, instantiate the object. Remember our amount due was 9,450. Now I haven't paid anything yet, but I'm about to make a payment. So I'm going to pay 1,000 Rand. And I'm going to process the payment. Right, it's been processed. We can see that our amount has now reduced to 8,000. Right, so I've already paid 1,000. Let me pay another 2,000. Let's process. There we go. It's gone down to 6. Can you see over there? So we've now paid 3,000 in total. If I pay another 0, it stays the same because we haven't paid any more. Right, so we can our class is keeping track of how much was already paid and how much is still left over. If I go ahead and now find the balance for this, 0 Rand is left over. Okay, we're almost at the end. We have one more thing left to do, they say here the customer must be able to view the details of their transaction. Code to clear the rich edit has been provided. Write code to display the attributes of the transaction object using the Tostring method. So I explained in the previous video that the Tostring method is to display the private attributes of a class in a neat and formatted manner. Let's have a look at the Tostring method again, just real quick. There it is. So result is always a function. Result is equal to, and I've formatted how I would like it to appear in the rich edit. Hash 13 is going to ensure that each one of these lines appear on a new line in the rich edit. So let's go ahead. Let's go to that last button. Okay. Red Q3 underscore 2 is clear. We can now go ahead and display it. So red Q3 underscore 2 dot lines dot add, and inside there we're going to call object transaction 2 dot Tostring. There we go. Just like that. The work has been done on the class T transaction 2. We only need to call the code when we need it. Alright, medium, instantiate the object. How much is due? 9,450 Rand. Let's view the details already. Okay, our details tells us that it tells us our ID, the size, the period, and it tells us how much we've paid. We've paid no money. And so we have our full thing here. Let's pay 1,000 Rand. Okay, immediately we can see our amount over there is now 8,000. Let's view details again. Alright, we can see now our amount paid is 1,000 Rand. So that's how much we've paid into this account already. Let's add another 5,000, shall we? 3,450 left over. We've paid a total of 6,000. Let's balance this. 3450, done, nothing left over, view details, and yes, we've paid a total of 9,450 Rand. And that concludes this question then. And that is a full, complete example of object-oriented programming. Now, I'm not going to take any more of your time. What I will do is, in the last installment for this part 4, I will be using another exam paper, most likely the September paper from last year, and I will be going through their object-oriented programming question quickly, without any commentary. I'm just going to complete it so you can watch it. It will be hopefully a much shorter video than these ones.